It started over mashed potatoes. I still remembered the way the gravy had pooled just right on my plate, the way the candlelight flickered across the silverware. It was one of those rare nights when everyone was pretending to get along. My father poured wine, my mother forced her smile, and my cousins chattered about their new jobs and boring apartments. I had just taken a bite when my cousin Jenna, always a little too bold with her jokes, laughed and said, "Well, Anna doesn't count. She's adopted anyway." The room went dead silent. Forks paused mid-air. My mother laughed too loud, too sharp. "Jenna, don't be ridiculous," she snapped. But there was a tightness in her voice, like a string pulled too tight. My father didn't laugh. He didn't even look up. His jaw clenched, and he kept cutting into his roast like he hadn't heard a thing. But I had, and so had everyone else. I smiled, too. That fake little laugh you do when you're the butt of a joke and you're not sure whether to be offended or concerned. But inside, something stirred. It wasn't the first time I'd heard a comment like that. Once, in 8th grade, a girl at school said, "You don't really look like your mom." In college, my roommate saw a picture of my parents and said, "You're sure you're not adopted?" And there were always the little things, the way my mother winced when I called her mom, the distant way she touched me, like I was fragile glass she never asked to own. After dinner, I asked my mom directly. She was wiping down the counter, her movements stiff, robotic. I leaned against the fridge and tried to sound casual. Was I adopted? She dropped the cloth. "What?" she said, not looking at me. "Jenna said Jenna's an idiot," she cut in. "You were born at St. Mary's. I have the stretch marks to prove it." That would have been enough for most people. But the way she said it, it sounded like a line she had practiced, like it wasn't the truth. It was a script. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned until finally, at 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed and climbed up to the attic. It was freezing and smelled like dust and old wood. But I remembered there used to be photo albums up there, baby pictures, hospital wristbands, that kind of thing. I found the box labeled Spring 1996, buried under Christmas decorations. My hands were shaking. Inside were baby clothes, a pink hospital bracelet, a few cards, but there was one photo I had never seen before. A woman, maybe early 30s, holding a baby in a hospital bed. She looked exhausted but proud. And she had my eyes. Not similar. Mine. That there was no name on the back of the photo. No date. But I knew. I just knew. I brought the box downstairs and confronted my dad the next morning. He was making his usual Sunday pancakes, flipping them with that easy calm that used to make me feel safe. I set the photo on the counter beside the syrup. "Who is she?" He froze. Pancake batter dripped from the spatula in slow motion. He didn't look at the photo. He just stared at me with this terrible sadness in his eyes. The kind that tells you everything before a single word is spoken. "You need to ask your mother," he said finally. "She said I was born at St. Mary's," I replied, my voice low. "She said she has the stretch marks to prove it." He gave a single, painful laugh and looked down at the floor. "I'm sorry, Anna. I wanted to tell you." "Tell me what?" But he didn't answer. That day shattered something in me. I had spent 27 years building a life on a foundation of lies, and now that foundation had cracks too deep to patch. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every memory felt suddenly suspicious. My mother's bitterness, my father's distance, the family gatherings, where I always felt just a little out of place. That night, I sat on the floor of my room with the photo in my lap. I kept staring at her face, trying to convince myself it wasn't mine, that I was just seeing what I wanted to see. But the resemblance was undeniable. Her eyes were my eyes. Her nose was mine. Even her chin had that same tiny cleft I'd always hated in myself. I went to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. I touched my own face like it was foreign, like maybe I could pull off a mask and see something real underneath. But there was only me, someone I didn't fully recognize anymore. That was the night I decided I had to find out who I really was. I started with the basics. I looked up birth records online, filtering by my birthday and the hospital name my mom had mentioned, St. Mary's, April 9th, 1996. But I couldn't find anything under my name. Nothing under Anna Price. No birth certificate, no discharge papers, no digital records. It was like I didn't exist. And yet I was here, alive, breathing, spiraling. I tried asking my dad again a few days later, catching him alone in the garage. He was organizing his tools, something he always did when he didn't want to be in the house. I showed him the photo again, hoping the quiet might soften him. She's not just someone, is she? I said. She's my mother, isn't she? He didn't say anything. He just kept moving tools around until finally, he rested both hands on the workbench and let out this long, tired sigh. She was a mistake, he whispered. I blinked. She's a person I know, he said, still not looking at me. But to your mother, to our life, she was a mistake. I didn't mean for things to happen the way they did. It was complicated. I felt like I was hearing the outline of a confession, not the truth itself. So, I'm not adopted. No, he said. You're mine. I never doubted that. You were always mine. But that word mine, it didn't comfort me. Because if I wasn't adopted, and this woman in the photo wasn't my adoptive mother, then she had to be something else. Something that unraveled every story I'd ever been told. Who is she? He finally looked at me. Her name was Emily. Was. The past tense hit me like a punch. Is she? I don't know where she is now, he said quickly. Maybe too quickly. She moved away after everything. She was young, smart, but the situation, it broke her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him. What situation? What did you do to her? What did she do to deserve this? What did I do to deserve growing up feeling like I never belonged? But instead, I asked quietly, does Mom know? His face changed, something flickered behind his eyes, and I knew the answer before he said a word. Of course she knew. That resentment in her voice, the coldness in her hugs, the way she never once called me sweetheart like she did with my younger brother, those were all signs, and I had mistaken them for indifference instead of suppressed rage. I couldn't go back into the house that night. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, thinking about Emily. What had she been like? Was she kind? Funny? Did she cry when I was born? Did she hold me tight and whisper dreams for me? And then what happened? Was she forced to give me up? Did she leave willingly? Why did they tell me she never existed? I didn't have answers, but I had a name. Emily. I Googled it that night. Just her first name and my father's. Together. It was a shot in the dark, but the internet had a way of unearthing secrets no one meant to bury. I found a comment thread from over 10 years ago on an old academic forum. Someone had posted a note thanking David Price and Emily K. for co-authoring a research paper. My dad's name, Emily K. My heart skipped. I clicked deeper. The university page was long gone, but the Wayback Machine had snapshots. Emily Keller, environmental science major, graduated in 1994. There was even a grainy old yearbook photo. It was her, the woman from the picture. She hadn't been some stranger. She had been in my dad's life, publicly, professionally, maybe romantically. The photo made sense now. They had been close. More than close. And at some point, something had happened between them that created me. I stared at that name until it blurred on the screen. I felt like I was floating in two different realities, the one I had grown up believing, and this new, raw truth blooming like a wound in the middle of everything. I wrote her name down in a notebook. Then I underlined it. I had no idea where she was, if she was even still alive. But I needed to know. I needed to find her. Because whatever this lie had been built on, I wasn't going to carry it anymore. I was done living in the silence they had trapped me in. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart racing with questions, memories, and regrets. There were so many signs I had ignored over the years. The time I came home crying after a classmate said I didn't look like my family, and my mom snapped, "Maybe because you're nothing like us." The photo albums where most of my early baby pictures were blurry, limited, or just missing. The way my mom used to sigh, almost bitterly, when people said I was so pretty, and asked who I got my eyes from. Now, it all made sense. I wasn't the child she had prayed for. I was the child she had to tolerate. The child she kept because it was easier to rewrite a story than to confront the truth. I spent the next few days consumed with searching. I became a detective in my own life. I combed through people's search engines, Facebook profiles, old university directories. Emily Keller was not exactly an uncommon name. There were dozens across the country. Some were too old, some too young, some looked nothing like her. But then, in a quiet corner of the internet, I found something, an old blog archive under the name Emily K_Grows, hosted on a gardening website. The blog hadn't been updated since 2015. but one post was signed Emily Keller and mentioned moving to a small town called Blue Pines in Oregon. It wasn't much, but it was the first real lead I had. I debated telling my father. For a brief second, I wanted him to be part of this search. I wanted to yell at him and cry to him and ask him why he had let it all happen this way. But every time I imagined his face, all I could see was that moment in the garage, the way he folded inward and disappeared behind excuses. He didn't deserve to come with me on this part of the journey. I called out of work the next morning and packed a small suitcase. Oregon was 2 states away. I had never taken a solo road trip before. But there was something empowering about it, like I was cutting the cord from the narrative they'd forced me into. I left a note on the counter for my mom that said simply, "Don't call me. I'll reach out when I'm ready." I knew it would enrage her. I didn't care. The drive was long and quiet. I let the road soothe me, the mountains and open sky giving me space to think. I stopped only for gas, living on granola bars and iced coffee. My hands stayed clenched around the wheel, like letting go would make everything unravel. I kept the photo of Emily on the passenger seat, as if she were coming with me. Blue Pines wasn't even on most maps. It was a small mountain town nestled between endless pines and a river that shimmered in the late afternoon sun. When I drove past the sign that read "Welcome to Blue Pines, population 4,362, something in my chest tightened. I didn't know what I expected: a billboard with her face, a lightning bolt. Instead, I checked into a modest roadside inn, tried not to tremble while writing Keller in my search bar, and hoped for anything. I started with the local library. Old school, I know, but in towns like this, everything starts at the library. I asked the woman at the front desk if she knew an Emily Keller. She squinted at me, then smiled. "Emily? Oh sure, she lives on Maple Hollow, just past the greenhouse with the blue shutters." My breath caught. "She still lives here?" "Oh yeah, keeps to herself. Sweet woman. You, her niece, or something?" Didn't know what to say. I just smiled and said, "Something like that." I followed her directions, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The house was exactly as she described: white, with peeling paint, and a greenhouse in the back surrounded by wildflowers. I parked a few houses away and sat frozen in my car for almost 20 minutes, staring at the front door. I didn't know how to do this. I didn't know what to say. "Hi, you might be my real mother. Hey, I think your entire life was stolen from you, and so was I." Eventually, I got out. My legs felt like jelly. The gravel crunched under my feet as I walked up to her front porch. I raised my hand to knock and then stopped. Through the window, I saw her. She was older now. Her hair was streaked with gray, pulled back in a messy bun. She was watering plants, humming softly to herself. She looked peaceful. And suddenly I was terrified. Because what if I was about to ruin that peace? What if she had put me behind her for a reason? I stepped back, but then she turned, and for just a second, her eyes met mine through the glass. Her hands stopped moving. The watering can slipped slightly in her fingers. She stared. I stared back. Then she came to the door, slowly, her face a mix of confusion and something else, something fragile. She opened the door but didn't speak. She just looked at me. I held up the photo. "I think you knew my father," I whispered.